What's up, you guys?
What's up, you guys?
I can't stand you. What's up, you guys? Welcome to today's video. Reese is back.
Awesome.
Say hello.
Hello, people.
Where have you been?
Not shoveling our driveway like I'm supposed to be, I can tell you that. Not building log cabins. Not fixing things in the garage with tools I don't have. None of that cool stuff. So to all of you that have been, awesome, good job for you.
So for those of you that don't know, Reese is a retired Army veteran. He was an Army Ranger in the 173rd
Airborne Brigade.
And he was the 350-ish person to touch down in Iraq.
Somewhere in there.
He has a lot of medals and he was a great soldier.
Some people think I was. I think I was all right.
Along with that came PTSD, which we have talked about before, and I will link Reese's story in the description box down below. But for today's video, we're gonna be talking about what he saw in an Iraqi prison. What are the differences between an Iraqi prison and an American prison? I thought this would be a really good starting place for that.
It's a good entry point. Okay, yeah, sure.
So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get started.
You're correct. I was in the 173rd Airborne Brigade, 2nd to 503rd Battalion, small little unit over in northern Italy. I joined up in 2001. Really excited, you know, was going to be a hero. Watched Rambo way too much. I was going to save the world, all that stuff. Anyway, so we jumped into Iraq, March, I think it's 23rd, somewhere in the middle of the night. It was dark. It was dark. So, and like she said, I was a 350-ish something. We've got a coin or something that's got my jump number on there. Anyway, it came with a lot of interesting experiences, and one that was recently got brought up, and maybe I forgot to omit, in the conversation of, hey, I'm gonna start a YouTube channel, was, hey, I've seen an Iraqi prison.
Never had this conversation.
Yeah.
And I told him when he was telling me, hold up, stop, because I'm gonna ask you a ton of questions for the video. Okay. So I haven't even really heard all of this yet.
Okay. So, you know, coming into a country that, you know, was being invaded, you know, a lot of things, we've made videos on this before, but I mean, a complete fallout of social structure, infrastructure, all of it. Guys were literally taking off their military uniform or their police uniform in the street and just giving up on it, like deuces, like the government was gonna fall. They knew we're about to lose, right? So, I mean, it was really interesting. We found tanks with shells still in the chamber, just left. Military personnel, police personnel, just, you know, all the people loyal to Saddam and the Ba'ath Party regime were pretty much like, this is, our time is over. We're done, you know? So they were just literally stripping it off in place. And one of the places that it occurred that you may or may not have to think about it is what happens to the police stations, what happens to the judicial system, what happens to the prison system. Pretty similar. Some stuff like that, you know, did occur. So one of the interesting things that has led us to this topic of this video is, what did an Iraqi prison look like? Everything in Iraq was pretty old. There wasn't a lot of updated infrastructure. So most of the prisons, you know, they look like they were built in the 1950s or 60s, like straight up Shawshank Redemption style, old cells, bars. You know, they had that big scandal with Abu Ghraib. You know, the military used it as a detention center. It was the largest and oldest prison in Iraq. But if you saw some of those clips, or like I said, if you can imagine like Shawshank Redemption, a 1950s style prison, that is kind of what the structure was like. Not a lot of open corridors, but when we found the first prison that I had been to, some of the guards had left and some stayed. I don't know why. I guess some people thought like, hey, we just can't leave this. And some of the people had been let go. Obviously, there were a few cells that were just open. We knew that there was stuff in there, like, there used to be people in here. Some were not. So I can only imagine why.
So do you think that people that were working in the prison were also working for Saddam, and and possibly they let inmates go that were part of that as well?
Correct. There was definitely, you could tell by the way the prison system was set up, and keep in mind, this wasn't my job. This is just very brief experience. I didn't have a lot to do with what happened here with these, you know, with these prisons and these infrastructure like police systems. My job was to conquer, kick ass, and let somebody else backfill all that stuff. And so really this is just a small perspective of what I can tell. There was definitely a class system, you could tell, within the prisons. So, and all the prisons would have been ran by the Ba'ath Party system, which was Saddam's, that was the ruling party. And I can assume that some of the class system would have been people that were guilty that were still either associated with that, or people that potentially had money, or I'm sure they had some sort of influence that allowed them to live a little better than some of the other people that were imprisoned there.
I do want to interject here and just say that you were a soldier following orders.
Yes.
Your political beliefs and preference doesn't matter.
No.
And you were serving your country.
Yeah.
I just want to put that in there because whether right or wrong, why we went to Iraq, it's not the point of this video.
No.
The point of this video is simply to discuss the prison system, and I just want to put that in.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That's correct. I mean, coming into the war and coming out, even my viewpoint changed. And I think a lot of people's did, good, bad, or indifferent, but you don't really get that option. Your job is to do what you're told. That's what you sign up for. It doesn't matter who's in the White House, what's going on. You do as you're told.
Anyway, how many people were in the prison when you saw?
I'm trying to think about how... I bet coming into there, and like I said, as we're taking over, we're taking on pieces of town. We're in Kirkuk, which is where we're at in northern Iraq. There's probably about 1 million people in Kirkuk, to give you a size of the city. I bet maybe 1,000 people, maybe less.
Okay.
Just from my best guess. Prison. Yeah. And most of this, like I said, as we're taking over sections of the city, we're trying to command, take control and command, take control and command. As we fight and take over as much of the city as possible, we kind of pass this, prison, this structure, and once we realize what it is, we're like, all right, what do we do with this? We can control this area, but this isn't really our responsibility. These people aren't going anywhere, right? So probably about 1,000 people. And like I said, you could tell some people had been let go. You could tell people had stripped their uniform off. They were like, not doing this anymore.
Did they go home naked?
I don't know if they went. I don't know. And it was really strange because the prisoners there responded really awkwardly to our presence. Obviously, they knew what was, they knew something was going on. Some prisoners were in their clothes, and some were like in jumpers. And I don't know if that was like maybe they didn't have clothes when they were thrown in there, or if it was like, if that was because they were separated on purpose. But a lot of the prisoners weren't in single cells either. They were like in large group cells. So like maybe 10 or 12 people in a larger celled off room. Okay. And you could tell they had they'd made their own little spaces in there. It's kind of how it was. And there was lots of those throughout. And there were some single cells, and I don't know if it was maybe because those guys were more dangerous or that's why they were in there on their own, but there was definitely less of those and more of a group pod setting. And then there were some, there's only one way to say this. There's rooms that you could tell that were used for torture. So they were like solitary confinement cells, but they had like a surgery stretcher. Like you could tell there was a pad or a table that somebody could be strapped up on. And these were dirty prisons anyway, but that room was very stained. You could tell that it was not a pleasant room. And it had a seep drain in them. They all had seep drains in them, but yeah, there was a couple rooms that were for that.
They had what?
Like a seep drain. It was all the floors were kind of tilted towards, so they, drainage. So, obviously it was probably for, piss, fluid, whatever, you know what I mean? So that was not a fun room. There aren't toilets in Iraq. I don't know how to say this. Squatty potties is what they have. And squatty potties are very different than what we're used to in the Western world. And, it's just kind of like a little squat hole, and you just drop your bum down. And like I said, the indoor plumbing to this place couldn't have been very good because it was very, very stinky. Like I said, very, very dirty. When they brought food, you could tell there's a place that they prepared the food, but there wasn't like a chow hall. So my assumption was that they brought food to these prisoners kind of like in these larger rooms or whatever. Mm-hmm. It was kind of like a communal setting. Like they brought it in and everybody this is how much food the pod gets, and the 12 people in there have to decide how to break it up, kind of.
Did they eat in their cell?
Yes, yeah.
That sounds more like a jail setting to me, because in jail, in America anyway, food is brought to the dorm.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So it's difficult to know like if this was a prison because it's a different country. Mm-hmm. But what you mentioned about the just the clothes that they were wearing, some had uniforms, some did not. That reminds me a lot of a Mexican prison, and I interviewed my good friend JC from Wrong Too Strong. I'll leave that on the card up here. He describes a Mexican prison, and it sounds a lot like that, where there's a lot of cells where there's a bunch of people in them, and there's individual cells. I'm wondering, and maybe someone out there will know, I'm wondering if you earn that cell. if you have to pay for that cell.
Yeah.
Because in a Mexican prison, you have to pay for privacy. It's very different than in the American system. So I'm wondering if that was maybe something.
You know, my experience was, and all the police stations had holding cells and like smaller, like just like a police station would here. And like I said, a lot of those, you know, I mean, there's just no police. Like I said, there's everything, just the entire civil infrastructure of a society just falls out. So like I said, they had some of that there. Could have been a larger jail or prison. I don't know. Like I said, we weren't too terribly concerned with it, but obviously once we kind of controlled it and moved on, you know, we kind of came back, and obviously, you know, periods of time you're checking on people coming in and out of this because it was a large structure, so you could tell, and these were obviously dangerous people, you know, for whatever reason. But you know, like I said, my amount of time there wasn't enough to tell you exactly what the norms were there, the processes. Like I said, I think there was probably maybe 20 guards there by the time we came through, but you could tell that there was nobody else coming. It was very interesting to see, like I said, and you could tell, like I said, it might have been a detention center too, like I said, because of the torture rooms, and you know, a lot of the people that were there were probably not Ba'ath Party loyalists. They were probably enemies of the state, enemies of Saddam, and because Kirkuk is a very northern city, there's a lot more resistance up there than as you go south. There's a lot more loyalty. Up north, there's a lot more Kurds. Like I said, a lot of people that didn't line up with the loyalties of Saddam. So it may have been a holding facility or detention facility for people they were looking for up there. I don't know. That's kind of what it looked like. And I mean, obviously, you know, I'm sure that they used this facility to restructure, to repurpose it, just like they did Abu Ghraib and other places, to detain and hold people that the American military later, for whatever reason, were keeping. But it was definitely an interesting experience. It was not like, you know, you would imagine a jail system or prison system to be here. Iraq is a very third world country, not a lot of money. Infrastructure was not kept up. You could definitely tell this was reflective upon the community, and as well as this jail or this prison system. But for the most part, it didn't look like there was a lot of unrest there. Everybody was really happy with the communal pod system they had going there. I mean, from what you could tell, they were like, "Hey, what's up? You guys are new." You know what I mean? Like, it was
the prison.
Yeah, the prison. Yeah, when we came in, they're like, "This is what's going on. This is why everybody ran out." We're like, "Yeah, not sure how to help you guys or what to do here, but hang tight. Help's coming." I guess, you know, I mean, that's pretty much what happened.
Think about it like this. What would Americans do if our government just fell?
Yeah.
And everything just stopped.
Yeah.
You know, inmates are a lot of times know what's going on in the street. You know, we're very well informed in this country anyway. But to just be in prison and the guards to just leave, I can't picture that. I can't picture what that would look like, but I'd be like, "Homie, let me out though."
Yeah, I mean, that was,
let me go.
And that was the issue. We're like,
what do we do?
Yeah, what do we do? We don't let you out. We can't keep you out. We don't know, you know, we're not the ones that say you got to stay here. I just can't help you now, bro. Like, I mean, like, our job is to make sure that there's nobody coming in here to shoot us or fight us, and we make sure that nobody comes back after we pass through this area. That's about it. So I'm sure somebody came along and made those decisions, and it's a hard thing to do. That's why it was such a complicated scenario. Like I said, when societal infrastructure falls, if you call 911 and nobody answers the phone, you know what I mean? Like, there's just no more legal system. There's no more judicial system.
Can you talk a little bit about what that looks like for, you know, an American soldier in a foreign country and the government has fallen? What did you have to deal with on a daily basis?
Oh, man. Imagine adult kindergarten. What if somebody told you that the rules no longer apply to anybody? And the rules that you now want to create, or you want to push onto other people because they were ugly to you or it was unfair to you at a certain time, are now the new rules. Imagine people can take whatever they want if you can't stop them. Because really, as a, you know, an insurgent party, because that's what you are, as an invading force, your job isn't really to police and control the population. Your job is to overthrow and basically displace the current government and military. What happens after that is a whole nother problem, which we all found out. So people just decide that red lights are no longer, they have stoplights. But imagine a stoplight every day and everybody deciding that red no longer matters. Just huge congestions. You're like, what are you people doing? Just green means go, red means stop. Take your turn. Why? I mean, and people would take things and be like, his family stole this house from my brother's sister's grandfather's grandfather 100 years ago. You're like, but that doesn't mean you can take it back now. Yeah, people would flag you down. I don't know how un-PC you want to get here. You know, a lot of violent crimes, rape, just the way it is. That was, you know, probably one of the most prevalent things in the first 6 months. Like I said, and, you know, property, like I said.
So what happens when those people commit those crimes?
Though that's the really challenging part. When you're a military force that is, that's not our job. The people that were there at the beginning, we're not trained. We have no idea how to police, maintain, to build up infrastructure. When all that becomes displaced and there is nothing to take its role, you now have people that, are only trained to, everybody's a hammer, and to a hammer, everything looks like a nail. All right. And now you're giving them problems like, what do we do with people that don't know how to stop at stoplights? What do we do with people that are taking and stealing property with rape? What do we do with people that may or may not be shooting at us because the person over here says that they're Saddam's people? Well, it turns out they're not. They're just people they don't like. And then what do you do when you're dealing with all these things and there are people actually shooting at you that aren't wearing uniforms? So it was a very dysfunctional system for a long time. And I don't have an answer for you on how they attempted to make it work. I think that obviously we found out in the years since that it is not an easy riddle to solve, but it's definitely something that people should be cognizant of when you overthrow a government anywhere. There's going to be complete chaos, complete rebellion. It is the purge at its finest, basically played out in real time. It's surreal because you just don't believe that things can be like this, but at the same time you're like, would this happen in America? Would this happen other places? And you quickly realize it would. It would. What if somebody told you that the rules no longer matter? You can do whatever you want as long as nobody can stop you. Now, I think in America, it would take people a little longer. I think people are like, are you sure there's nobody that's going to call 911? The cops aren't going to come because there just are no cops?
Well, I want you on my team.
I'm just saying that was really the biggest struggle. So prison, people that were being detained, these are all things that, that were the party that was previously in power. This was their problems. Well, you inherit these problems, and we don't know what to do these things. Like I said, it was a bad prison, bad place. It looked like people were not treated very, very great there. But I definitely think that, I think that they probably did the best they could to make sure that got taken care of. I don't know. I wasn't present for it after the fact. It was kind of interesting to see, especially the little torture rooms. Like it was just, that you knew that it was like, people were like, yeah, that's the room down there. And you're like, so that room, scary. And they're like, yeah, scary room.
I do want to say that American prisons have also tortured people. So Larry Lawton talks a lot about being strapped on a table and urinated on by correctional officers and beaten by correctional officers. I know plenty of men in prison that were beaten by staff members. It's not uncommon, but to have a specific torture room, that is just heartbreaking and gut-wrenching, but
that was the way it was. I mean, that was the way it was under Saddam. That's kind of why it wasn't a good place to begin with. You know what I mean? But
if you overthrow a dictator with no systems in place, what do you do?
Yeah.
So
that was the problem. Like I said, and that was the issue with this prison, with the police forces. I mean, what do you do with those? Those are excellent questions that I wish somebody would have said, all right, we've got a plan for this. And we just didn't. Like I said, and once you get there as the force that comes in first, the first wave, these are all the things that you see or you encounter, and you're like, what do we do? I don't know. We just move on to the next. Are these people cool? Are these people fighting us now? No. Next step. And that's pretty much the way you respond to everything.
I do want to ask you one more difficult question.
Shoot.
So in America, after the Twin Towers had fallen, we were all told that we had to go overseas because there would be weapons of mass destruction and they could attack again on U.S. soil. So as an American soldier, first man on the ground, what did you see as far as these weapons of mass destruction?
Well,
because I think it came out later that...
Yeah, the jury's still out. Didn't find any of those. I can tell you at first there was a really big push or initiative to find these weapons or anything that could lead to the location of these weapons, a lot of disinformation about the weapons of mass destruction. But in reality, and I think it's not a secret, so I can say it here, it came out after the Gulf War, the first time that we had a conflict with them. Iraq was a completely broken down system. Saddam was not nearly the dictator he was. The military force was not near what it was. We bombed that country into oblivion. I mean, they probably couldn't have legitimately thrown an artillery round into the country next to them, let alone had weapons of mass destruction. This was a hobbled military, a hobbled country. I think that's why it was so easy for them to make that decision, because it was literally like, it was like the all-pro NBA team beating up on the junior high scout team. There was nothing there, man. They absolutely had just been bombed back into the 1500s in that first Gulf War. A lot of the airstrips still had craters. I mean, they never rebuilt. They just didn't have the money. They didn't have the government support, the infrastructure to even take that kind of beating. And they pushed that narrative, but that wasn't at all the reality. They absolutely were not a threat to the United States any more than they were a threat to a country sitting next to them anymore. And the idea that they could have harbored terrorism, do you think a dictator that really loves power and wants control of everything inside of his own borders would allow any kind of terrorist party that could potentially be a threat to him and his government? Nah, he didn't want any part of that. So
how did you feel after you realized that our government lied to us about a lot of things?
While I was there, I don't think I really thought of it, to be honest with you. You're just pretty much thinking about keeping it real, honestly. I mean, you just don't think about that. Obviously, you realize the objective changed. We understood that the goalposts were continually being moved, because even when we jumped in, we were told 90 days. 90 days. Our job was to basically come in, knock out whoever was there, control the ground long enough for them to fly in reinforcements and the people that do all the other stuff. 90 days, you boys will be back home. Well, 90 days came and went. Then it was 6 months. And then it was 10 months. Then it was 12 months. And then, after that came and went, I think we did 15 there, something like that. Somewhere around there. Not quite a year, but not quite a year and a half. And I mean, obviously we knew that it was a different kind of war. And we knew that, the objectives and the missions had changed, over a period of time. It went from the weapons of mass destruction to they had the deck of cards trying to rout out all the Saddam high-ranking Ba'ath parties. We got to do a lot of those missions. At the end, it was really, the hearts and minds. And, I didn't really put a lot of thought to it at that part. A lot of it was insurgent fighting. I think it went from fighting one kind of war to another kind of war when we were there.
I mean, because you're just trying to survive.
Correct. Your number one home mission is to come home. And number two mission is to bring as many people around you home with you. And everything past that is a distant third. I mean, and a lot, your whys and a lot of things that people think you may struggle with, you don't. You just don't. You know what I mean? Mission one and mission two. Those are the two priorities. Everything else is, and that's probably... Until later. Until later is, I think when I came home and I really got to digest with me and I kind of got to see what transpired there. And I'm not going to say, I know what the motives behind it were or anything like that. I could just tell that it was a poorly planned war. I think that we were not given all the information, and I think we could have done a better job. Now, was that my decision to say when I was told to do what I did? Not at all. My job was to go. And then once I go, my job is to come back. That's it. I know that seems really basic for folks, but that you hang on to the basic shit when you're in that kind of arena. And that's getting it all murky and fuzzy in your head with all the stuff that you worry about when you come back home. It's just going to distract you there, and it's pointless. It doesn't do you any justice. So I think when I came home, the reality set in that it was not a good thing. I really kind of was unhappy with some of the things that we did, but I didn't really let it eat at me. I got to come back. That was my number one. I accomplished mission number one. Come back home.
So do we know today what has happened with the inmates in that prison?
No,
we don't know.
I couldn't tell you. I mean, it's not like I write any of them. We have phone.
You don't write them?
I don't know. No, I mean, it was really weird. One of our interpreters, Yassine, remember his name was Yassine. He smoked cigarettes like this. He was an Iraqi gentleman, older gentleman, and he had been in an Iranian prison for 12 years during the Iraq-Iran war. And I really liked Yassine. He was a good dude to have with you. He was very politeful for a guy in the scenario that he was in. But he spoke like 7 different Arabic dialects. I mean, wow. And he was like, and I still don't know what everybody's saying here. So he was a great guy to have with you because he could speak a lot of, they have Pashtun, they have a lot of different dialects that people speak, and and he had a lot of experience. And for a guy that had been through some of the stuff he had been through, like I said, and for him to tell us what it was like to live in an Iranian prison for 12 years, and that's kind of when we had him with us when we found this prison there, and he was kind of like, yes, this is what it's like, and these. He was kind of like, yes, these people and these things are bad. These over here, they're good people. Like, they just got put here for bad reasons. Like, I mean, he kind of gave us the quick and dirty, and we're like, what do you do? There's nothing to be done here. We just keep moving. Like, I mean, you know what I mean? He's like, somebody else will take care of this. Let's go. Like, I mean, so, yeah, but I remember he brought some interesting perspective to that because he had been in the region, and he spoke really good English, but yeah, you've seen. it'd be kind of cool if we still talked to him. And there was a few other interpreters. They were really, they were kind of basically your window into what things were like, and you know, and what was going on, and you know, is this cool? Like, no, this guy's lying to you. He's definitely lying to you. I can tell by talking to him. You're like, are you sure? Because it could be you that's lying to me just because you don't like this guy. It's like, yeah. So yeah, that was really interesting, but I have no idea what happened. I would assume that somebody else worked it out. That was not my problem. I mean, that's the only way to break that down. It was just not my problem. So
for me, I know that there's a lot of jobs that I would be horrible at.
Yeah.
That was top of the list. I'm from a small town in upstate New York, and there's not a lot of opportunity. So I did know people that joined the military young. And you know, I always loved journalism, and I really wanted to be an unembedded journalist. I didn't want to kick it with you guys.
You want to kick it?
No, I wanted to write objectively from afar.
Wow.
I'm very grateful that you're sharing this with us.
Okay.
Reece does not talk about the military very often.
It's not a hot topic at our house.
Even though I want to pry it out of him.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, you know, there's some things that, you know, the people are like, well, do you want to know? I'm like, are you sure you really want to know?
You probably don't.
You probably don't. But, you know, I think, you know, it does, with that comes a lot of PTSD, a lot of maybe survivor's guilt. I know a lot of people felt guilty about the things that they did. Yeah. You know, perhaps maybe their opinion about the war changed, and, you know, their purpose and how they were used. And they felt that, you know, a lot of things they did were in vain. You know, there's a lot of things that go with that. A lot of things that you have to kind of unpack and deal with when you come home. And the really sad thing is I think they got several rounds of guys, especially like with me in the first wave, that they got us in there and they got us home, and they didn't realize that was going to be a problem until after the fact. They didn't really give you anything to deal with that, or, you know, any resources. They were just kind of like, thanks for playing. Hope you enjoy your time. You know, I mean, that was it. It wasn't something that they were focused on.
Was PTSD.
PTSD, yeah, okay. and how people deal with it, yeah. And, you know, unfortunately, now we know it's a rampant problem. It's a rampant problem, and it's just part of what comes with the deal. I think that some people are affected more by it than others. Yeah. I think some people unpack it better than others. It's definitely a dot-eye problem. It depends on the individual. So.
For sure. All right, you guys. Well, thank you so much for clicking on this video.
Now that we got deep, let's wrap it up.
Please leave some encouraging words for Reece. I know
this isn't easy. Leave some good comments. I'll read them, and if we don't like them, I'll just tell her to delete them.
Reece, you're a moderator. You can delete them.
A word? Sweet. I didn't know that. I'd be deleting all kinds of people.
No, don't delete them.
Okay.
All right, you guys. As always, we love you. Stay safe. Stay sober. Whatever that looks like to you. And we will see you in the next one. Bye, guys. You know, they say that if you wear your hat like that, you're a fuckboy, right?
Challenge accepted. Woo! Yeah! Fuckboy status overload. All right.
Scooch over a little. God, you're on my shit.
This way? That way?
Yeah.
Oh, this way.
Get away from me.
Okay.
We're so in love.
All right. I want you to be in the same room, but I don't want you to talk to me or touch me. Are you starting or am I starting?
I'm starting.
Okay.
Hello, this is Jessica K Show.
Okay. Guess I'll go fuck myself.
Stop! I'm trying to not laugh so I can make an intro.
Okay. Awesome.
Say hello.
Hello, people.
Where have you been?
I was on the couch watching football, scratching my nuts.
Can you not start out with scratching my nuts, please?
Okay. All right. So.
Are you bald?
No.
Ah, yes.
Yeah. Oh, people think I'm bald, don't they?
People think you're bald, dude. I know.
I got a beautiful head of hair. It's soft, like a baby's bottom.
Let me see. It is really soft.
It is really soft.
In the past 2 years, he's gotten really gray.
Super gray. I'm graying it up.
What's your dad doing here?
Dad doing here on this video? Well, that one we used to film in your bedroom? But what are they doing hanging out in her bedroom? Well, it's also my bedroom.
I don't know how to do that.
I sleep here too.